Yesterday, a 5-game series decided our third semifinalist. See if the teams today have what it takes to earn that 4th spot in Oakland. FlyQuest enters as the underdog. We'll see if they can be yet another number 6 seed to upset the favorites in today's matchup against 100 Thieves. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LCS Countdown, where for 30 minutes we get to the last page of the playoff script and crunch some postseason numbers until the timer reaches 0 and we jump into Champions Select. Let's start things off with a look at the bracket presented by Jersey Mike Subs. Yesterday, TSM took the first quarterfinal match. They won't know their opponent until the conclusion of today's match between 100 Thieves and FlyQuest, where Team Liquid will be asked to choose their opponent from the quarterfinal victors, leaving the remaining team to face Cloud9. Now, today is the last day that you can earn yourself a free trip to Oakland through Jersey Mike's Subs. Use that promo code JMNALCS at jerseymikes.com to enter a sweepstakes, and you could earn a VIP trip to Oracle Arena. And if you don't manage to be the VIP, you can still join us in Oakland by going to lolesports.com/tickets and grabbing your seats in Oracle Arena. Yesterday, though, we had our first quarterfinal series, and it really felt like it could have gone either way, even in Game 5.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really tough game for both teams, and I think there's high moments and low moments for almost every single player throughout this series, and, you know, there's a bunch of pentakills, too, so you could tell it was a very back-and-forth match.
Yeah, we had 2 pentakills in this series. We had 1 pentakill in the regular season, then 1 during the tiebreakers, so definitely a very bloody series, punctuated by some very important team fights, like extremely entertaining. But you also have to think about what comes next for these teams. Yes, TSM beat Echo Fox, but then they move on to that next stage where they're playing either Team Liquid or Cloud9, who are both significantly stronger than Echo Fox in the second half of the season. So it's very good for TSM to move on from that incredible battle in the quarterfinals. But semifinals just a whole new ballgame.
Right, some interesting trends, some interesting pivots, you know, brought up in that 5-game series yesterday. Ultimately, TSM comes out on top, but as you mentioned, only tougher opponents on the horizon for them. Bjergsen himself, though, in his post-game interview, did throw down some words about how they're not necessarily afraid of anyone.
I mean, I think we already have a feeling that we're going to play C9. I think Peter might say that we're boosted, but I don't think he has the balls to actually pick us, so I'm already preparing to play against Jensen for next week.
I love that version of Bjergsen.
I do too.
Oh, yeah, to say.
Confident.
And it's interesting, too, right? Because if the format was last year's format, Team Liquid would most likely be playing TSM if 100 Thieves won, because the 3 would play the 2 and the 1 would play the 4. So
right.
There's a real chance that Team Liquid actually does pick TSM, and it will be made so much better by that clip. I was envisioning the Team Liquid's like already filming the reason they're picking TSM in some trash talk video. I'm getting ahead of myself.
I saw the Reddit comment that was like, if I was double, if I would just be like, if you're not boosted, then I'll see you in finals.
Yeah.
And it's like,
well, hey,
like, you know what? Like, see you at that when it actually matters.
But it makes it good either way,
yeah,
right? If they play in the semis, that's a fantastic matchup, and even, you know, aided by that comment. And hey, if it's in the finals, then I'd love to see that too. Either way, the semifinal opponents are going to be tough ones for whoever qualifies up against them, especially in today's series. But keying more into what we saw yesterday, first evidence of 8.16, patch 8.16, there were some notable nerfs kind of across the table, and we definitely saw some of that come into effect yesterday. But even in spite of some of those nerfs, picks still being played.
Yeah, I think it was a patch that was pretty clearly aimed at nerfing power picks. There was a lot of nerfs on champions that were seeing a lot of presence in the games, and it's resulted in a situation where people are starting to drop Aatrox bans. Red side doesn't feel as limited. Some teams are starting to favor red side. But for the most part, even things that were nerfed are still viable. We've seen Zoe and Academy have great games. We've seen Tom Kench in all the series still being played despite that big nerf on the W cooldown.
Yeah, I think one of the main results is it's put a higher emphasis on support picks. There's a limited number of good tank supports. Brahm's priority is way up. Even engaged supports like Rakan are just being banned a lot more often. And overall, I do feel like the game is trending more towards tanks and hyper carries. You see part of that pronounced by Kai's really high win rate around the world on patch 8.16. So hyper carries in a lot of ways I think are back, but a lot of it is still unsolved. We don't know whether or not Tom Kench is going to be priority. We don't know if Zoe is going to be priority. And that stuff's going to be really key in the series today.
I mean, when we say things are trending back towards tanks, but let's remember that as the series went on yesterday, the top laners, as an example, going to Kennen and Jace eventually, right? So we still kind of are very much all over the board.
Yeah, and I think it's the kind of thing, too, where like mid lane is very volatile right now in terms of what people think are the best. We see a lot of assassins with things.
Akali very clearly still seen as powerful, but outside of that, seems like a lot of options.
Yeah, LeBlanc's being played. You can go for more control mages if you want things like the Orion and the Rise. And people tried a little bit of a Zero, didn't look so hot. But I think it's a situation where what works best for your team is really what you should be playing, because it doesn't feel like this power pick is so much better that you should get completely taken off your comfort for it.
Well, a bit later on, we'll talk about how this might affect today's series. For now, though, we're going to get final thoughts, or rather on the quarterfinal matchup. Going to send it out to Captain Flowers, Kobe, and Zyrene. As we go, though, St. Vicious thinks that if FlyQuest can repeat their early game successes, they can take the series.
I mean, obviously people say like playing versus someday because, you know, it's like the two main carries. But I think it's more going to be like bot lane. Like last time, Cody in his game went like 0-6. So I'm pretty sure like Turtle will be able to beat up on him again. We ran the same strat like 4 times in a row in the LCS, but that's just because like they just kept giving it to us. So like, why not play it? And why show more if you don't have to? So I think that we have enough strategies to like go into this BO5, and we'll be able to adapt.
St. Vicious talking about if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We'll see what FlyQuest can bring out today. And while they deserve a ton of praise for their meteoric rise and the wins they found for themselves throughout Summer Split, those wins are hardly win conditions that you can bring into a best-of-5.
Yeah, a base race is not a reliable win condition to have, but it did net them multiple wins during the regular season, right? But that's where they kind of had to go, okay, it got us to playoffs, but they had to find a more reliable way to take down the spring finalists in 100 Thieves, because 100 Thieves, they find ways to win games, even if it drags on.
Yeah, especially in the late game. We saw that literally in the tiebreaker match, which was basically a preview to this series. FlyQuest got a huge early lead. Wild Turtle solo killed Cody's son almost 3 times all by himself, and yet 100 Thieves still are able to weather the early game. Keen gave over some kills to Ryu Zoe, and that got them through the mid game. Once they get into the late game situation, Afreeca usually takes over with the shot calling, and they were able to come up with the victory.
And despite a split with all kinds of changes, 100 Thieves have managed to keep their spot at the top of the table, like we saw them in spring, as you mentioned.
Yeah, spring split, they ended up being second after playoffs. But here, they had to go through all these changes, like you mentioned, Clayton, where they had Funnel as the big strategy, and they were #1 with Cody's son being the person they put all the gold into. Then they had this jungler change, the mage's bottom lane, and they had to swap everything up, and they still ended up in 3rd place, which is very impressive.
Yeah, and a lot of it is due to 2 people, right? We talked about Afreeca a little bit, his consistency for the shot calling, the late game. Every team that he is ever on focuses on the meta game, focuses on objective trading later on, and then Someday, of course. We have to talk about Someday. For this summer, it has been the summer of Someday. He has dominated in the top lane. He has been such a huge carry force for this team, whether they're winning the game at times, you know, playing with little resources, you know, or losing. He has had basically all of it.
Well, we're going to see if FlyQuest can pull off the upset versus the #3 seed in not too long. But until then, back to the analysts.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. As exciting as these playoff matches will be, we all just want to know what will come of the summer postseason. So let's pull more snippets from the playoff script. Again, found this backstage, and I figured I would clue you guys into a few things. First up, scandal strikes Smoothie's meteoric rise into the health food market when it's revealed that Uncle Smoothie's old-timey holistic health elixirs caused dramatic loss in LP, not as advertised.
Yeah, I'd say that's unlucky. I also feel like the Naked Juice Company might have something against
a few
that.
lawsuits headed Smoothie's way.
I don't know. I saw the picture of it yesterday. It looked strikingly similar
to the boosted smoothie.
You notice some similarities?
Yeah, I thought maybe it was.
How many of those boosted smoothies do you drink on average?
Not that many, actually.
Okay.
How many boosts you paying for? All right, I found one that I kind of liked, actually. As an incentive to win the summer finals this time around, Nadeshot offers the reverse of what happened last split. Instead of fresh new kicks for securing the semifinals, he threatens to buy the team 100 Thieves branded Crocs if they fail. So these will still be unavailable for purchase. Unfortunately for the average person at home, still no merch.
What's more effective
I hear they're only
motivator?
putting half a shoe available in the store, so the button just starts sold
you
out.
just choose left or right Croc. That's all you get.
Still not convinced anyone will buy those.
You'll never get the set.
I don't know, man. You'd be surprised, I think.
People who buy Crocs swear by them. As
right.
Like, they're so comfortable. It's like, I'm still not putting them on.
Would you be motivated?
They're actually not that
Would you be more motivated to win a series by getting a pair of Yeezys if you win, or getting a pair of Crocs if you lose?
I wear literally.
You can just choose not to wear shoes.
What's the greater motivator? And Jap chooses to go shoeless.
I have more than one pair of shoes. After the look lives, we got the next one from last week. Pobelter files a restraining order. As you can see, the look lives
maybe went a little far.
A little in violation of privacy against the NALCS cameraman that took these shots. But then they reconnect when they realize that they have a shared hatred of Mark Z.
Ah, yeah,
Who
most
doesn't?
people do.
I think he's really the person.
I mean, again,
who
there's
brings
the
us
real
all
through
together.
line here, and I follow that lot.
Yeah.
That's a
I
good
agree.
mustache.
This is a good script.
Yeah, well, I'd probably like that version of Mark Z more, but
With
I
the
don't, you
horns
know,
and
yeah,
stuff.
with the mustache,
Yeah,
but
less
I don't
evil.
see, you know.
I'll come in next week. I'll work on it.
Okay,
There's
fair
a
enough.
Costume shop.
Next up, Darshan looks to consolidate his power in the Players Association by declaring himself president for life.
That's an interesting one. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah.
But I guess the Players Association runs by the.
Did no one
Players
else show up for
Association
that
rules.
vote or something?
I don't know.
Probably
I'd believe it. Feels
All
like
right,
it.
man.
I'm not voting on
I
the
like
whole
it.
thing.
Hey, he's just
Well
asserting
dressed.
his dominance,
Yeah.
ruling with authority.
Makes sense.
There's
right?
no better candidate, so why not?
Exactly.
For life. Anyways, finalized. I saw the final kind of note that we had here.
Oh, yeah?
And after establishing himself as the heart and soul of the NALCS countdown, fans demand that Joel takes over the hosting duties, kicking the
What?
no
Oh,
talent
interesting.
hack dash to the curb.
That doesn't.
When's that gonna happen?
And also North
That's in the
America
script?
win Worlds, which
Huh.
I
Oh,
get to
that's
that
rude as
line.
hell. Who wrote this?
I think I'm on board with all of
Are
those
you
things.
serious?
the NA winning Worlds is kind of wrong.
Show your face.
Who is that?
Sorry guys.
Joel?
Sorry, it's the first draft. Let me.
Oh, it's Joel.
Yeah.
Oh, what do
Of
you
all
know?
people. He's in cahoots.
Yeah, it's the first draft. Just give me a sec. I gotta work on it a little bit more.
Yeah, afraid better be a first draft.
There's some
Give me a couple
use.
backspaces in
You need
there
to
and
make it a
rewrite
little
that
more
ending,
believable
friend.
about the NA winning Worlds part. That's probably the least believable part I read in anything you
Is
just said.
It's
Is
more
the NA
believable
winning
that
world?
Joel takes Dash's spot than NA wins Worlds.
That's I
If
don't
I had
like
a
that.
bet. Yeah, I think I
NA,
would.
prove them wrong, please. All right, time for us to take a break. When we return, Jat probably has a new Jat Stats jingle, and CLG's Darshan joins us to break down the quarterfinal matchup. All that and more after the break.
have so many different stories between our players on why we can't make final or why we can't win, but new story starts with us winning.
And Echo Fox are going to playoffs.
Recently, we've started living up to our old reputation that TSM is a team to be feared. I think all the teams that we're playing against know that we can show up at any given day.
You think TSM, you think Bjergsen, and now his visage is burned into the mind of every fan out there.
This playoffs is a pretty big deal for me because last time I was in playoffs was 2017 spring. This year at playoffs, I want to perform a lot better.
Wild Turtle got a solo kill on a Cody-san.
In my career, I just won once, and I did a lot of time second place. This is one more chance to be champion, so I want to win.
Someday is the savior of 100 Thieves.
We started from the bottom, and we had a really rough road ahead of us. And then we managed to, prove everyone wrong.
They'll take the Nexus, they'll take the bye, and they are taking the NALCS by storm.
What a season from Team Liquid. The Spring Split champions locking in first place here.
In playoffs, I just want to get back to the form where, it's impossible to kill me. You know your bot lane's going to lose against me no matter what. That kind of fear, I know that teams always have it when they play against me, so I'm going to get that again. I think I want people to remember that any time that I'm playing in LCS, I'm going to win.
NALCS Countdown is back with 11 minutes to go until Game 1, and I'd like to welcome CLG's Darshan to the analyst desk. Thank you very much for joining us here for our second quarterfinal.
I'm so glad to be here. I just hope the games today are as good as the games tomorrow.
As crazy and chaotic as yesterday's.
Tough to match.
Oh,
that was an
my
insane
goodness.
series.
Well, you're just in time for perhaps the worst segment in the history of all segments. No, before we get into the series, it's time for one analyst to feel superior in this edition of Jazz Stats. So we got Darshan to help us out.
My favorite.
Have you ever heard the lyrics before? It's like, yeah, go, Mark. We don't need you here.
Yeah,
fine. Yeah, go for it. Go over to the telestrator.
Going back.
First answer is C. All right.
Wait, really?
Woo!
Okay, I'll guess C.
Thank you, guys.
So you guys know about the all-team voting, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So C9
Yes,
had
we were a part of it.
C9 had the most overall votes. They had around 370 points
Combined.
towards all people on their team.
Yeah.
So there was one team that had 5 points
C.
total.
C.
What team
It's
do you
C.
think it is?
It's C.
I think the song had something. I definitely don't think it's D. I think I'll have to go with C.
C.
You don't think it was D?
Something tells me
Bio
that's the first answer.
Yeah, there's enough.
Yeah, what about
C.
Bio and Sticks? I think I'll have to go with C.
I'm really tempted with C, but the song is trying to scare me off it. I think so.
Wait.
I'm gonna go with C.
Wait, what about
Dash is locked in apparently.
Locking it in.
I'm going with C. They have definitely on Golden Guardians. He picked
Right?
up some votes.
Yeah, probably.
I know for a fact I voted for Deathly, and a few other
You guys
people
listen
did.
to the song. It was clutch. Congratulations.
Hey,
Yeah,
celebration.
people.
Play the song again.
Yeah, Hakuho got 3 points.
You know-
and Solo got 2.
I'm a little disappointed because I think I would have got that without the song, and now we're just not going to get any credit.
Yeah, now
No
we just,
credit, Mark.
We just look
Okay,
dumb.
question 2. What game was the largest comeback of the summer split? Do you
By
remember the
which-
game?
just
by gold.
by
so
sheer gold
down the most
deficit.
gold. It was 9.1K was the deficit, and that team ended up winning the game. Which team was this? Can you remember the 94 games and pick the one with the largest?
I think I know. I'm feeling
Okay.
like it's a
Darshan?
it's a FlyQuest game. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
I think it's it was a FlyQuest game against TSM.
Over who? Yeah.
FlyQuest
Was it
versus who?
the
Or
was
the
it
100 Thieves one.
FlyQuest versus
the
TSM.
random split?
Okay, Darshan.
Or no, FlyQuest versus 100 Thieves.
Yeah, I think it was
versus
FlyQuest
100
versus
Thieves
100
versus
Thieves.
100 Thieves. That was the game. I remember Sunday
It's
was
also very
popping off on the
topical if
dough.
that is the answer.
Interesting.
That would make sense for the days.
Hey!
There it is.
Darshan's
Two
good
for
at this.
two.
Nicely
Two for two.
done.
This could
All
be the
right.
first Jazz Stat sweep. Darshan will have to be on this. It should be called Darshan stats. Blue side wins. Which team has the most of them in the summer?
Is this also FlyQuest because of their ridiculous blue side win rate?
Too. I totally.
They have
don't look at that. That tells you.
This is why you don't
we
do
actually
these
have
at the
a
desk.
sheet.
Yeah, we have a sheet
that
that tells
shows
us
blue and
win
red
rates.
side wins.
Literally,
No, it doesn't say if they're
win. They've only won on blue. They have one blue side loss.
All right, let's go with FlyQuest.
I'm gonna go with FlyQuest.
Here, you can have a sheet. I have 2 sheets.
Darshan?
I'll go TL. I'll mix it up.
Okay, they are the first place team.
That would make sense too, actually.
It's close. 100 Thieves.
I was going to say 100
I was thinking
this
100
sheet
Thieves.
does show you blue side, red side.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what that does?
That's what the blue is.
Side
Did you not know that?
Well, it's because
We've been looking at these sheets.
I didn't want to
for
cheat
years.
with the sheets.
because all the red side games are losses, so I thought it was just coordinating loss as that color.
I want to thank Riv for making these sheets and
By the
also
way, yeah, big
for
fan.
literally giving you the answer in front of you. And
I didn't want to cheat.
We got it right.
I looked at it for a second, but then I was like, no.
That's why he's the
Thank you.
president.
I'm
Thank you,
still
Darshan.
impressed.
Integrity.
2 wins, 1 loss on that edition of Chat Stats.
Better win rate than my LCS record, so.
All right, ahead of
so far.
today's series, let's listen in on FlyQuest and 100 Thieves, a back-and-forth tiebreaker which determined their quarterfinal matchup.
So we want team fights to be as long as possible. They want to go fast. We want to go as slow as possible in team fights, and just keep them in front of us with like Ezreal, Zoe poking.
Oh, go. Hey, we need go. I got him. He's dead. Careful. We killed bot. 3v3 top. 3v3 top. 3v3 top. Try to get out. No, we got left arm for free. No flash. Yo, Braum is moving. He's far though. I got. Nice. Let me know. I'm blocking.
Yeah, I'm going. Hey, rock prepare. I'm coming.
He's going for it. Look. Oh my god.
Hop. We can turn. We can back off.
Let's go mid.
Oh, you're going? Okay.
Careful, Lumber.
Hop.
Hey, I can come. Kill Rumble.
Don't back, okay?
Yeah.
No flash, please, son.
Kill one.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, my bad. I just took it there.
That's okay, bro. Just make sure you tell us you're going.
You guys can fight in the pit. You guys can fight in the pit. Hey, kill GP kid. You guys can kill. Yeah, yo, they're coming over here.
Got.
Get out after. Get. Oh. You can kill. Okay.
Yeah, fist.
Fist.
Are you exhausted?
Fish in.
I need help.
Take it slow. Nice. Kai, you guys got it. Very slow push.
You go Beres.
Busy.
Hit the pit.
No flash.
Yeah, kill side. No push in the end.
3, 2.
I was gonna go away.
3, 2, 1. I got it.
Nice.
Okay, let's go. It's setting a TP. Something GP in sync.
Guys.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry, guys.
It's okay. It's okay.
That's fine, bro.
Well, unlike our matchup yesterday, expectation around today's quarterfinal are less variable as the number 3 seed 100 Thieves are the clear favorites.
Yeah, and also it does have a little bit of deja vu to last year's quarterfinals when you remember the 3rd and the 6th place teams played a tiebreaker game because they actually ended the season at 10-8, and then one team went 2-0, their name was TSM, another team went 0-2, their name was Clutch, and we walked into the series thinking, wow, this team's a huge favorite. That is kind of how it feels with 100 Thieves right now because the recency shows us that FlyQuest lost both tiebreaker games, including the tiebreaker game they played against 100 Thieves, but I definitely don't think it is that solved since they did both end the regular split 10-8.
Okay, so how does FlyQuest clutch it out today?
I think I'm looking at a lot, like the Tom Kench pick in terms of picks is a huge thing I'm looking at because they did so well with that champ. I mean, even remember playing against them, they had like the best Tom Kench ports out of any team. And another thing I'm looking at for draft is the top lane matchup. I think someday having a favorable matchup against Flame is a huge thing from draft. I think skill-wise, they're both pretty equal in terms of laning, but whoever gets a good matchup, like Someday is shown to do so much for his team. And if he's getting pushed in the whole game and mid-game, then 100 Thieves isn't gonna have that pressure.
And I think another thing too, based off that Clutch series, was Sven played one of like the worst series we've ever seen in his life, and that was what kind of enabled Clutch to find that upset versus TSM. And you as FlyQuest are hoping to find someone you can similarly pick on in this series. We saw it kind of happen to Cody-san a little bit in that tiebreaker game. We've seen there's been matches this split where Afro's gotten picked on. It can happen to Ryu, and so if they can find someone underperforming on the day or being able to get draft advantages against that person and kind of exploit them, I think that's a good path you have to try and find.
Yeah, and I do think that FlyQuest's teamwork is maybe underrated when compared to 100 Thieves. They actually play the 2nd fastest average game time for FlyQuest, and they have the 2nd most combined kills per minute of all teams in the league. So they actually play pretty fast with pretty good teamwork despite not having amazing early leads, which generally means that if they do get an early lead, they're pretty good about closing it out, save for that one tiebreaker game they literally just played against 100 Thieves.
Right, I was going to say, how does that interact with 100 Thieves, who I believe is on the lower side of the combined kills per minute?
They're third, actually.
They are third?
Yeah, and they lead the league in kills. They also play longer games.
Yeah, they play like seventh.
Partially, yeah.
All right, well, after the tiebreaker match versus FlyQuest, it's hard to bet against 100 Thieves, though, because as you mentioned, the early lead was built for FlyQuest. 100 Thieves still mounted the comeback.
Yes.
And it feels like 100 Thieves even feel that way a little bit, because Cody's son, in an interview after that match, said, even if, I went 6-0 on Ezreal, or 0-6 on Ezreal, basically, and I still won that game. So I feel pretty confident going up against them in quarterfinals, because as long as I don't do that again, we should be able to win this series pretty easily. So it does feel like even 100 Thieves are kind of buying into that storyline a little bit.
I think I'm going to be looking at that Wild Turtle versus Cody Sun lane a lot, because I think if Wild Turtle can, again, pop off, if Cody Sun goes 0-6, I think FlyQuest could actually carry that over this time. I think they made a lot of mistakes in their loss, and I don't expect the same thing to happen on stage. Another person I'm really looking at is Keen. This whole split, I think he's had a lot of underwhelming games and team fights, and I think FlyQuest really needs him to step up for them to do better.
Yeah, and I feel like even though I do credit FlyQuest teamwork for being very good, I think 100 Thieves teamwork is often the best in the mid and late game as far as vision control and finding the right initiations.
So where do you consider 100 Thieves to have an advantage then? Like, at what point are you willing to say, this is a comfortable position for 100 Thieves, I'm confident they'll win?
3-0. Like, that's the point. I'm not super confident in either way for this. I do feel like they have more flexibility than FlyQuest and a slightly better mid and late game. So I'm thinking they're the favorites in this matchup. For sure.
Okay, cool. That's what I was driving at, the idea that mid and late game is where 100 Thieves, you feel, has the advantage. So going into mid game, behind, are they still good, right? Like, is there a metric by which you're saying, oh, I'm actually still comfortable with 100 Thieves being at a deficit at 20 minutes, but only by this much?
No, I think if FlyQuest has a lead at 20 minutes, I'd think they'd have the edge in the game.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
What are the win conditions then for our last quarterfinal matchup of this postseason? Mark, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, a lot of talk kind of indicates where I'm going with this. Starting with someday on the top side, the Rumble has been huge for both teams. I want to see that kind of power picked away, or you have some kind of counter picks prepared for those power picks that both sides are probably going to be reaching for. Comfortable champ for Ryu. I agree on the point that Keen has been underperforming, but with how the meta is right now, I'm still fine with Ryu playing Zoe or something like that if that's what he's most comfortable on. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages in the whole series, actually, surprisingly, even though we didn't touch on it nearly as much. And then control bot in the game, because I am concerned about Wild Turtle. So if you need to send your resources down bot lane, this is what they did a lot in spring with Meteos and Afreeca combining together, kind of do that again here. And then ban the spam. FlyQuest loves picking the same stuff over and over and over again. Tom Kench Brom. Ban whatever's working as fast as you can in the series.
All right, Jat, on the flip side, FlyQuest.
I will say that even though yesterday we saw TSM play red side 5 times in a row, blue side is really, really important. We saw FlyQuest had the most 100 Thieves had the most wins on blue side. FlyQuest about the second most wins on blue side. I think it's very important that Flame neutralizes Someday. This is either in a CS advantage early game or just matching him, because Someday has been such a large part of 100 Thieves wins. And then this next point, if Flame goes tanky, then Keen's got to bring the damage, or if Keen plays Galio, that opens up Flame to have damage. But the main point of this is I think they only win with traditional team fighting comps, which is like double or triple frontline and some hyper carry threats in the back. And there you either need Ryze or a better team fighting comp, since Ryze is kind of the one champ that I think can break out of what is looking a lot like a team fight meta because of how well he can play 1v1s in the side lane.
So I think to some degree then the question becomes about how many different strategies does FlyQuest have? Because you talk about this idea of banning the spam, and we have seen that FlyQuest on a few picks in particular. Super competent team with leads. They know how to play it out from that 15-minute onward point. But do they have a deep enough pocket that they can keep going back if 100 Thieves identifies correctly what those picks are?
I think it was interesting to hear from Saint in the pre-series interview kind of say, we're aware people have this perception of us, but we personally are confident that we have enough picks. We just haven't seen it yet.
In scrims, I've seen them pull out a lot of different strategies. For example, I think Flame is a very capable carry top laner, but they often they're running the tank comps, like Jat was saying, they're running these standard comps. So if Saints if they really do have something, then I want to see it. I want to see these other strategies, because they're not pulling them out on stage. They might be doing it in practice, but I want to see what they can do in this quarterfinal match.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When playing in scrims and playing on stage, as we've talked about many times, is a completely different ballgame. So I don't doubt that FlyQuest has played well with different strategies in practice. But the fact that, yes, they did keep giving them Rumble, Trundle, Tom Kench 4 games in a row, but also as soon as it was denied, they lost on stage. And to me, that's the important thing. So there is that transition, and I'm waiting to see that happen for FlyQuest to show the flexibility when it matters most.
Now, there is a small issue with some mouse drivers on stage, so we got a bit more time to talk about the game, but I do want to jump into some predictions for the series and kind of use that to catalyze a bit more conversation. So down the line, who's going to win it? How many games? Mark, we're going to start with you.
3-0, 100 Thieves.
3-0.
Going for the big confident.
Oh, my God.
Let's go, 100
Boom,
Thieves.
the SmackDown.
Yep.
All righty.
I'm going to go 3-1. I think we were talking about like mid to late game 100 Thieves, and my boy Afreeca, like when it gets those late game decision makings, I think he's so clutch at, you know, getting everyone on the same page. I definitely think he's going to be able to pull this one out.
All right, Jat.
I mean, Darshan got like all the Jat stats right. He's really a credible voice for predictions, I do feel like. And I'm also going with 3-1 because we're both correct.
Okay.
I got the same number of Jat stats right as him. What are you talking about?
That's kind of true as well. Well, you all line that you think 100 Thieves is going to win, and so
favorites,
are the favorites for this match. But as we kind of teed up at the top, this is a 3-6 match, just like the last one where we thought there was a favorite in spring, and it did end up the other way. And so I want to dive a little bit more into how or where FlyQuest can find their advantages and ultimately take a victory.
I think their global play was something we were talking about before, is one of the best in the league, actually. Their use of the Tom Kench ults, combining that with Ash arrows and things like that. And while Tom Kench has gotten nerfed, it does feel like we've started seeing more Shen support to kind of come in as the global support to playmake with. And if JJ and FlyQuest have a read on that, that's another pick that, you know, we talk about these new supports coming up, other things getting banned. That might lead to a situation where FlyQuest just has too many useful support picks for 100 Thieves to want to react to.
Yeah, I mean, if they pull out the Shen pick, I think that would be great for them. They use Tom Kench so well, and I think picking the Shen would open up Flame to play carries into Someday. That would hit 2 problems. Like, they're playing globals, and they have Shen, so Flame can win the 1v1 against Someday. So if they pull that out, I mean, that'd be extremely good.
Yeah, I think that's one of the unknowns I have going into the series is what's JJ's pool going to look like with the Tom Kench nerfs. The other unknown going into the series is what the Keen Ryu matchup is going to look like, because when you think about these two teams, the mid laners never really fly to the front of your mind. You think FlyQuest, like, oh, Santorin had this comeback split, Turtle's been good, top lane's been good. You think the same things about 100 Thieves because Cody Sun was leading the league in kills. You never talk about the mid laners. But the mid lane is so important right now as either a control mage or a split pushing assassin. So, like, the ability for either one of those guys to displace superiority is really important in the outcome of this game, I feel like. And neither one of those guys has actually had a great year.
It's interesting, though, because I feel like we've keyed into so many matchups, and it's funny to say that, yeah, though that one, while maybe not being the first one that your mind goes to, is just as important as any other matchup swinging. Again, a lot of people are going to look at Flame and Someday as being top performers, you know, being on first team for Someday down to Flame being tied for third team. And it's, okay, you don't necessarily have Ryu and Keen out there on the first, second, and third team of it all, but that matchup actually could be the most relevant in some cases.
Right, because when you look at how these two teams play, they're actually really similar, where they have these top laners who are picking a lot of powerful champions and being huge forces. Their bot lanes are obviously the other part that kind of works together and tries to get a lot of kills for their teams. And then I think Santorin's got the advantage over Onda, and then I would say Ryu has the advantage over Keen, and those are actually two of the actual mismatches in the series, whereas everyone else is trying to do very similar things. I think that mid-jungle synergy could be a huge problem for one of the two teams, whoever is actually able to get the advantage in that situation.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, the other thing is we have the delay on stage. We'll give you updates as we move on. I do want to talk a little bit about Santorin because he did play Trundle 4 games in a row. And Darshan, I'm also curious about your thoughts on the jungle meta right now with Trundle being nerfed, and if Sejuani is the other pick, because you can fall back on the damage picks a little bit. We saw Santorin. Lee Sin, he had one good Kha'Zix game. Or is it still just going to be Sej Trundle? Neither one of these guys screams like Graves Kindred to me, even though I think Graves Kindred is potentially the stronger junglers, right?
I think we're going to see Olaf coming out in this series. I feel like that's kind of like the pick in between tanks and carries that most junglers pick up. And I still think that Trundle is a really, really strong matchup into Sejuani because later in the game you just steal so many stats. So I definitely think Olaf is like the next pick we'll see. And I think the team with Olaf will have that early game advantage. And talking about like mid lane, like we were saying earlier, I think that's like quietly one of the most important matchups because whoever has control of mid lane, like we were saying, has such a big impact in the game. And like you look at teams like TSM, you're like, oh, Bjergsen, like they're going to have that mid control. But you look at FlyQuest versus 100 Thieves and you're like, yeah, maybe Ryu has the advantage, but who can really say, right? Like who's going to come to play today? And I don't really see like a huge player skill difference between Ryu and Keen based on what I've seen the split.
Yeah, both of them have had their ups and downs, and their champ pools I feel like are pretty different too.
Yeah, I wonder how much Zoe we're going to see.
That's
a
I'm
big
like,
question for me.
Both of them get it a lot.
Win rate wise, it went down like 3 or 4% in the solo queue data that's available online, and it was kind of the go-to pick for both of these guys. Zoe, when played well, fits in both of the assassination as well as strong team fighting, but it did not have priority yesterday. So I'm thinking it probably falls off.
Yeah.
There's just a chance, though, that you leave it up late in the draft, Keen's just going to go for it every single game because it's still one-shot potential, right?
I mean, Ryu and 100 Thieves were getting it like second phase after 10 bans.
Before any nerfs.
Yeah, before any nerfs. So, like, I have a feeling that this is going to be a pick that's available, and it's just whether they still think it's valuable enough after those nerfs. Because if you like going late as 100 Thieves and most of those were scaling nerfs, maybe it's enough to push you off of it despite the comfort.
Well, what speaks to me is the fact that you guys can find ways that all 3 lanes, all of the different matchups can affect ultimately the outcome of this series. We'll get into more of this in just a bit. While we resolve the issue, we're going to step away. Before we go, though, we are deeply saddened to hear about the shooting that occurred at a Madden 19 tournament in Jacksonville, Florida this afternoon. And we want to extend our deepest condolences, to the victims, their families, and those affected by the tragedy.
definitely going to have to work on our early to mid game versus them and like what we want to do, because they value like all the champions that can do that, just have pressure and move around the map, go for a team fight early. As long as Andy gets to control the early game when we come up against FlyQuest again, and Ryu and him get to like 2-man all over the map, I think it'll be a lot easier, because don't really care too much about their bottom lane. They like to play those pressure picks and stuff like that, but Cody and I don't have a problem dealing with pressure like that, and middle is just like easier place for us to like move around.
Welcome back to the NALCS Countdown. Just heard from Afreeca, and he has identified that the early to mid game is what 100 Thieves will have to shore up if they expect to come away with victory against FlyQuest. But I was more interested to hear about the pairing that he keyed into, that he thinks it's going to be Anda and Ryu needing to come together as a duo to make stuff happen on the map.
Yeah, so I think mid jungle is just the most important roles in the game, essentially, and especially for early game, they just have the most control on the map. If you're winning mid and jungle, well, you can win top lane, you can win bot lane for your team. So I think that's why Afro realizes that. I think they're more focused on the fundamentals, and he's just pointing that out.
Yeah, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, Darshan, when we're talking about post 20 minutes, what it is like to play against either 100 Thieves or against FlyQuest, because 100 Thieves has about 7 minutes more on their average game time than FlyQuest. And we always talk about 100 Thieves vision control and the teamwork of these teams, but having played, multiple games against them during the split, have you noticed any differences of what it's like to play between the two?
Yeah, so I think both teams have some distinct differences. I think they're actually both pretty good at the mid to late game, and when I'm playing against FlyQuest, I think they're more focused on champion mastery and abusing that as much as possible and rotating. So when I was playing against them, I think I was Cho'Gath, and they had a Tahm Kench. They would port on me under tier 2 tower and just instantly kill me.
Yeah.
No other team was abusing that with Tahm Kench, right? It just looked like I was inting on stage, but I thought they were actually playing it really well. And then you look at 100 Thieves, right? I remember I was playing Mundo against his Darius, Sumday's Darius, and Sumday had pressure that game. And 100 Thieves would constantly play to have Sumday group, and they would have pink wards set up, and they would constantly play to pressure as a team, and they would be playing around like mid control and mid lane a lot. So I think that they have a really good understanding of the macro game and how mid lane is the most important lane when it gets later in the game. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how these teams match up in terms of, will FlyQuest work better with their champion mastery and rotating around the map, or will 100 Thieves work better because they have Afreeca at the helm and they have a really good understanding of macro? Because something about Afreeca that people don't know is that he's really good in terms of post-game and teaching people about how to be better at the game. So I think that's why they're so good at the macro. And yeah, you see Afro getting ready for the game right there.
Yeah, that's meditating. Sure. I think another thing that's really interesting is when you get into the mid to late game, I think they're still slightly different stylistically, where 100 Thieves play, like you've heard them talk about, this annoying style where they want to pull you apart and make you react to them. So when they set up their 1-3-1, like, I don't think they move between the lanes nearly as much as FlyQuest does, because what they're trying to get you to do is commit to one side, and then on the other side will abuse you. Whereas FlyQuest, when they get the 1-3-1 advantage, they will then port like 5 people down to one lane and abuse that person who's left alone. And so 100 Thieves are more reacting to where you send your pressure and trying to move away from it potentially, whereas FlyQuest feel like they're trying to like use all those globals that they pick to like run it down right through one of your lanes.
I also think one of the interesting things that we kind of talked about yesterday, again, was the idea of adaptation and how important it is in a best-of-5 series. And so, again, when it comes to that macro control or mastery from both teams, even if it's displayed in a different way, I'll be curious to see from game to game, based on who gets the victory and who gets the defeat, how they decide to change things going into the next game to dismantle maybe the winning strategy the other team displayed.
And I really want to see how JJ reacts to a best-of-5. Because this was his pretty much first split in the LCS, even though he subbed in a bit in spring. And I thought he did great. I thought as a shot caller, even as his Tahm Kench play, he's been really good. But he is up against Afreeca, who, as Darshan mentioned, is used to adapting the best-of-5s through years of LCS experience. And it's going to be a huge test for JJ.
To be fair to JJ, he has played a ton of high-profile matches, as high-profile as you can get as a rookie in terms of collegiate and academy finals.
All right, well, the ready checks are going through on stage, so we're getting close. So it's time to send it to the casters to get into the start of the series.
All right, thank you very much, Dash. Hopefully we're going to be jumping in here in just a couple minutes for this quarterfinal bout between 100 Thieves and FlyQuest, and hopefully we get some exciting games, boys.
I definitely think that will be on the table. If the tiebreaker was any indication, you know, they do both have very good strengths, and they're pretty well defined. As they said on the desk, you know, a lot of the early game and specific champions working out for FlyQuest, but then 100 Thieves were still able to hold on. They come back in the late game, and you start to get that feeling like there's this inevitability that if you don't end the game quickly against this team, Afreeca is going to direct them very well in the late game, and it becomes so difficult. But as Irene also brought up, you know, FlyQuest have been successful in a lot of base races late.
Yeah, that's true. FlyQuest has been able to throw down and take the really risky ones. But that's the thing is FlyQuest games have actually been pretty damn exciting lately. They've been able to get early leads. They've been able to, when they don't get early leads, at least have not that feeling of inevitability, but at the same time, feel like they have the ability to end a game with a decisive call. It's basically, I love what Darshan was saying, it's macro versus mastery here between these two teams. 100 Thieves have that macro game, FlyQuest have that champion mastery.
Also, I just like listening in on some of the team comms that we had before this, where even in the play where Ryu jumps over the back of Baron after they got Baron and Afro made the call to go mid, and Ryu went off on his own and he died, and they lost a lot from that. Even after that, he's just like, it's okay, bro. Just tell us, you know, that you're going next time. No problem. And it's those types of things, staying composed, keeping your team upbeat in those late game situations that can really give you the edge.
I mean, that's so important. What are you going to accomplish, even if your teammate makes a play that's suboptimal, by saying, man, that was bad. Now we're in a bad spot. Come on, what the hell's going on?
Pretty sure he knows.
He does. Yeah, when you mess up, you know. You're often the person who knows more than anyone else just how messed up the play was. Being able to have that team reliability to have your teammates say, no, it's all right, we're fine, it's still going to go forward. Mental is such a huge aspect of this game, and that magnifying glass, that lens, becomes so much more intense in a best-of series as well. It's so critical.
Yeah, got to keep that mental strong. I actually got to talk to Robert Yip, who's the sports psychologist, or I guess the coach behind the scenes for FlyQuest, who helps them with their mental game. And he was saying that everybody on that stage has actually played best of fives before, right? Keen, Santorin, Flame, Wild Turtle. JJ had played some in Academy and also from U of T, where University of Toronto, in the collegiate scene. So they all have best of five experience, but he is still a little bit worried about up against FlyQuest because the games tend to go long, or up against 100 Thieves because the games tend to go longer. So it's a more taxing type of mental fortitude that you need, where you need to have a lot of endurance.
Yeah, and I do remember that interview from JJ too. It sounded like he had the right attitude with it. He was excited to get more high-pressure situations. He wanted to be, you know, put in more high-profile playoff situations like this on bigger and bigger stages. So he has kind of his eyes ahead as well on moving further.
Well, the stage is set. The curtains are finally drawn. Let's see how the teams will compare as we're entering into Champion Select the first time today in this best of five. 100 Thieves on the blue side, FlyQuest on the red. The first ban from 100 Thieves, Tom Kench, the most played champion of JJ in the summer split. Not a surprise seeing that one banned.
Yeah, what do you know? Despite the changes to Tom Kench and the nerfs to the Devour cooldown, they still don't want to give access to JJ to the Abyssal Voyage. Darshan was giving firsthand experience on how well FlyQuest have used this champion to increase the tempo of the game and make those cross-map movements.
And the question is something like Zoe going to jump up here, or even Akali, right? The two mid laners here don't jump out to me as Akali players recently, but somebody like Ryu, you go back to harken back to the days. He was the other Zed in the Faker Zed versus Zed matchup. He has played Assassins before.
Is that what you want to bring up?
I'm
That's
just saying.
Not the memory.
I am just saying that he has played them before. And also Akali, I believe, in the 38 games played on patch 8.16, there's only a single game where she was not picked or banned.
All right, looking at the rest of the bans, now that they're completed, it's Varus and Rumble banned out by 100 Thieves. FlyQuest decide to take Gangplank and Rakan off the board. Critically, 100 Thieves pick the Braum for their support. That is a huge pick for both of these teams.
Yeah, denying both the Tahm Kench and the Braum in a 1-2 combination here to JJ forces him onto something else. That's what a lot of people were calling for, with the FlyQuest lineup. As they also said on the analyst desk, Shen is a possibility. But I want to return to Zyrene's point about the Akali and about how prevalent it has been. Not banned here yet, not picked either. Now, #1 and #2 counter picks into Akali that pros have been talking about and that we have seen used successfully are the LeBlanc, and you try and get those kills. It's a little bit more volatile, or the Galio, which seems much more like the team play and cross-map sort of answer. That is a possibility. Still, she's not shown up, though.
Yeah, she hasn't shown up. What shows up here is the Kai'Sa, who's actually the most prevalent ADC on patch 8.16. And right now, she has a 16-3 in terms of win rate on 8.16. So she's the most picked. She's got an 84% win rate on this patch across 19 games. It's very powerful. People are kind of going for the tank plus hyper carry type strategy.
Yeah, it's funny because she has gotten nerfed over and over since she came out, but people just keep jumping builds.
Yeah, you just changed the item.
This champion can scale off of every single stat in the entire game, so then you just move on over to the next sort of build. And right now, Stormrazor is so strong, the item is actually maybe a bit too strong, so pretty much all AD carries are rushing that, and it works very well with Kai'Sa, allowing you to get early upgrades to both your E and your Q.
Well, if we're talking about getting going early and talking about hyper carry type champions, 100 Thieves were very quick to lock in the Tristana for Cody Sun. They see the Nocturne on the enemy team. They pick something that can get itself away from it. They're also going to grab the Rise there in the mid lane for Ryu, as the final pick in the first half of the draft for FlyQuest is the Alistar.
Yeah, and I've been definitely a big fan of the people trying to start utilizing Tristana. We saw it a little bit previously already in some kill lanes, but she definitely has a possibility. If you have either Braum or Alistar, the two supports in this game, those have very high kill potential, especially if you get a gank, because she can close the gap with her rocket jump very quickly, has a lot of burst damage, and you get a stun from your support.
Yeah, and she outranges the Kai'Sa here, so it's a good matchup for her throughout all points in the game. But the Alistar alongside the Kai'Sa gives you that gap closer. It gives you a way to add 2 plasma for her combo and burst people down. And I like that they have Engage here on FlyQuest to help force the issue, because 100 Thieves, one of the strategies that they love to go for is 1-3-1, the split push, which the Rise is going to help with there. And the way you counter that is being able to engage with the Alistar and with the Nocturne.
Yeah, Nocturne very good at trying to pick off people in the side lanes. And we've had multiple accounts from previous teammates of Afreeca how he greatly prefers in the later stages of the game to play multiple lanes at once and create push and pull pressure situations across the map rather than doing, you know, just the standard group up, try and push down the turret or something like that. So Nocturne and Kai'Sa should be good at closing that gap.
I would say he's a bit of a map investor. He likes to not put everything in one lane and just kind of put it
diversify your lanes.
Exactly. Rule number 1 of the investing.
All right, second part of the bans are done now. 100 Thieves will go ahead, target the 2 different solo lanes here. Cassio and Gnar banned out, while FlyQuest have now banned out all 3 of Onda's most played junglers throughout Summer Split. Graves, Trundle, and Kindred all taken out of the pool, really trying to knock him down onto lower priority as they pick up the Cho'Gath for themselves.
And this is interesting that they went and they picked the Cho'Gath, because you could pick your mid laner here up against the Rise, but it might be 100 Thieves potentially flexing the Rise around, and they're afraid of that because there has been Rise top lane that has been played, and they're just locking in this very solid champion for Flame, even though the Rumble was banned away, and it's just going to be tank versus tank here. So really wanted to see the whole composition before they lock in the mid lane for Keen.
Yeah, it's interesting that they are going to have Someday here on the Ornn duty, as you know, previously Ornn had a lot of really good matchups in topside, pretty good laning phase, as well as bringing the big team fight presence with his ultimate, but recently taken down quite a bit as far as the lane phase goes, and Someday has been, you know, the big star player for this team in this split. He won't be the one, you know, dealing all the damage, right? He can set up the play with a good roam. We see it a lot of times where an Ornn, if they get lane control, can roam towards mid lane especially. You get off a long range ult to start something off, but aside from that, it is going to be frontline duty.
You can hear the collective sigh of disappointment from nearly every voice in this audience as the Akali pick switches over to a much more tame Taliyah. But Taliyah will be the final pick of the draft on the side of FlyQuest.
And you should get excited for Keen's Taliyah. Keen was one of the guys who made Taliyah jungle a popular issue. He was one of the mid laners. He got autofilled into jungle. He immediately spamming Taliyah, and he was the one who really popularized this in North America with a huge win rate as soon as the changes happened to the champion. This is a guy that has complete mastery of Taliyah and goes right back to what Darshan was talking about on the desk.
And I want to see what he does here, because this goes back to kind of FlyQuest strategy from the tiebreaker. They said the bottom lane looks like it might be the weakest lane. Focus down there with Wild Turtle Cody-san. You have a Talia, you have a Nocturne, go camp Cody-san and try to make his day awful.
They've got the tools. Let's see how it works out between these two teams. The coaches are shaking hands. Everybody's getting fired up. It should be an exciting game number 1 here with the compositions that we've seen drafted so far.
Yeah, I really do think these compositions complement the teams and their styles so well. On the side of 100 Thieves, you have a perfect team fighting comp set up, and on FlyQuest, you have a lot of globals to try and pick them off.
Here we go. Here we go. It is game number 1 in this potential 5-game series to decide who is going to be the last of the 4 teams that will get to go to Oakland for the summer playoffs.
And a lot of the desk was saying 100 Thieves heavily favored. You can't really disagree with that. It's the 3rd seed versus the 6th seed. But from FlyQuest perspective, they actually feel like they match up quite well against 100 Thieves. They went 1-2 against them, counting the tiebreaker, and that tiebreaker was very close, and there was the potential for them to go 2-1. So out of the teams that FlyQuest could have possibly matched up against, they felt like this is the best one for them in terms of they can get those early leads against 100 Thieves. They have the potential to close it out, and they're actually quite happy with this because they feel like they've been able to take some games off them, especially in things like scrims too.
Yeah, they definitely have. And you were talking about it also helps that they had the jungler trade, and they're from FlyQuest going over in the Meteos trade to 100 Thieves. So theoretically, they should have, a lot of inside knowledge as far as how